I was told blatantly that you're going to have a baby at some point, probably. We can't risk you not being around. When you look at women by department and women by levels of seniority, the pipeline is becoming weaker. COVID was a game changer. It changed things within that year because there was acceptance that actually our people are amazing. We have a really resilient workforce. People have worked at home. When you bring it together, we call it the inclusion advantage. So you're generating a competitive edge for your business.
Welcome to another episode of Women in Ports. Today we are joined by the brilliant powerhouse Heidi Heseltine, the founder and CEO of the Diversity Study Group. She is a force of nature when it comes to changing the industry in terms of diversity and making it future-proof. So welcome, Heidi.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your time. So it'd be really good for the audience to know who is Heidi Heseltine? How did you join the industry? And can you just maybe talk a little bit about that journey and of your 35 years, I believe, of joining this industry, right?
Yes, and I'm more than 35 years old, just to be clear.
Just a bit of a
dinosaur. So I started working in the industry when I was 17. I had done a bilingual administration course, so actually it was called a bilingual secretarial diploma back in the day, and was looking for my first job. Speaking French at the time, I got a job as a receptionist at a tanker owning company in London. So I completely fell into the industry. It wasn't something that was planned. I worked in that role for about 9 months and was bored out of my mind just doing pure admin, if I'm being honest. I was distributing telexes. That was the highlight of my day, colour coding. But someone saw something in me, the ops manager, and I moved into vessel operations within 9 months and then spent the next 12 years of my career in vessel ops, which I loved. Absolutely was the most amazing experience and introduction to the sector. I then, after 12 years, wanted to move away from operations. So it was a case of, well, where can I go? The commercial roles that I was really interested in, I wasn't able to open any of the doors at the time. And of course, back then, one of the things to keep in mind is we didn't have jobs on the internet. It was 2 shipping publications, that was it, or it was who you knew. So then I moved in very briefly into the .com side of it. So I worked for a company that was trying to really blow things open from the .com perspective within maritime, and that didn't go so well. But then I moved into the people and culture space. So I worked in recruitment for another organisation. I set up my own company in 2008 doing international recruitment, and then moved into the inclusion and diversity side of things I started discussions in 2017, moved into it in 2018. So with DSG, that's what I've been doing ever since.
What were some of your first impressions about the industry and how has that evolved from then until now? Okay,
good question. First impressions, I loved it. I loved the fact that there was such a big mix of people in the sector. I loved the opportunity to deal with people all around the world. I was dealing with masters, port agents, charterers, technical. It was so fulfilling and helping ship goods around the world. I mean, for me, it was eye-opening in terms of this is the potential. And I think thinking about, obviously, the conversation we were going to have today as well, there was part of me thinking, what else did I get exposed to? It was also actually the technology, the comms side, because when I started, as I said, I was starting with telexes, but then of course you quickly moved to having computers so you could be on call 24/7. Then it moved into Blackberries, then it moved into the iPhone. So it was also actually from a technological point of view, although I don't think I realised it at the time, it was very much the case of, right, here's the latest tech, you've got to stay in touch 24/7. Although the Blackberries and the iPhones came a bit later, they weren't when I was doing ops. And how has my thoughts on the industry expanded? It's a phenomenal industry. I think there is something in this sector for everyone. I don't think we're particularly good about how we portray that and the opportunities that are available in the sector. But it's fascinating. And even though it's global, it's still such a heavily relationship-driven industry. I think it is the value of network is something that I've come to appreciate over time as well, and just generally the overall opportunities. I cannot imagine working in a different sector.
So you obviously touched upon that your journey was from commercial operations, admin, HR. What led you to find Diversity Study Group? What was the gap in the market that you decided, right, this is it? This is what I'm going to do now?
The gap that I hoped existed was around working towards providing best practice working cultures for people. So I'd come from a time when we're doing, I don't know if you remember Investors in People, and certainly in the UK, companies were, we'll do this, we'll get certified. I didn't see that translate into much of tangible use in the workplace. So for me, what I hoped was through the use of data, the data that we could get through understanding how diverse is maritime globally and how inclusive is maritime globally, that data translated into who's having which experiences across the workforce. So what can we learn from the really positive experiences, but also identifying where we could do more to make things better for people. And alongside that, creating a community of people who collaborate together, of organisations and people in those organisations to share best practice. So what are we doing that's working well? How can others learn from us? So that it wasn't, the data drove it, but it was also coming together to really talk through the practical side of things was also what I hoped would make a difference, and it has.
So what was the reception from the industry initially, so back in 2018, and I guess to now, 2025, that's been a journey of 7 years.
Yeah.
What was the reception like, and what was some of the learning from that diversity story of, if you were to do it again, what would I do differently, I guess?
I think what's changed, so we started with a coalition of the willing, so organisations who really wanted to make a difference to their people, and that worked really, really well. So we had a core group of members committed to making progress in the industry, and outside of that, DSG was also forming partnerships, so we became knowledge partners to global maritime forums. So we were working also at an industry level to help promote change as well. So we were seeing how we could help the industry progress, industry level, organisational level, and at a personal level as well. It was slow in the early days to get people to really see the value of what this work could look like and how it could really help positive change, because also you are talking about asking essentially a CEO to commit resource, whether it's time or money, and it's normally both. So turning that into translatable action was slow, I would say. COVID was a game changer.
Yeah.
COVID changed things within that year because there was this widely publicised as well acceptance that actually our people are amazing. We have a really resilient workforce. People have worked at home, which wasn't really a surprise because it's a 24/7 industry. So many employees were already set up to work from home and do it well. But actually also those who couldn't, so in certain sectors where you do have to come in and do the work, that how could they adapt over time? So we saw that be a real game changer. And of course that brought seafarers right into the centre of the discussion as well, because they were absolutely the people having the worst experience as a group of people in the industry. So after that, things changed, and they changed quickly. So there's a lot more interest and a lot more move to action, which has been, I think that's ongoing. It hasn't stopped. Recent political agendas, particularly if you look towards the US, there's been a concern that might slow down progress, but it hasn't. Organisations who are committed are absolutely doubling down and saying, nope, this is what we stand for. This is the culture we want for our people in this sector. We're not changing.
So it's interesting you said that about the US landscape, but I recently was a guest at one of your the DSG conference, which I think for anybody is one of the best conferences I've been to, because you put that action piece in there, and there was a lot of conversation about diversity initiatives, how you bring the theory to action, but looking at the data. I'm going to just ask you a very simple question. Why is diversity important, and what does diversity mean for you?
Diversity for me is embracing all of the different types of differences that exist. So that comes from demographics, so it comes from gender, it'll come from ethnicity, age, but also very much looking at the other differences that exist. So it's learning styles, it's personality traits. So it's how, from an organisational point of view, can you benefit from the diversity that already exists in your organisation, but also then considering what are we missing? Because when you bring it together, we call it the inclusion advantage. So when you bring everything together well and you generate that inclusion advantage, essentially you're generating a competitive edge for your business. That's ensuring that people are able to share their opinions, but also that it involves everyone. So it's not just perhaps your extrovert who's used to speaking up in a meeting who's getting all the airtime. You're really bringing in the perspectives, the opinions, the views of other people as well. And as a global industry, you're ensuring that you're having a balanced approach globally as well. So I think why is it so important is because it can really help you solve the challenges that we face in organisations, but also in the industry, by ensuring that people have their voices, ensuring people are treated fairly, so given opportunities, and through that diversity naturally gets leveraged as well. But you can also identify areas, as I say, where actually you might be missing those different voices and perspectives, and then you can ensure you do the work necessary to bring them in.
So as we mentioned, diversity comes in all forms. But just looking at the gender side of things for the next question is, when you as a woman, when you joined the industry, were there any challenges you as a woman that you faced? And do you think that hindered your progress, or do you think it was an advantage? Or was it something where you're actually, but it didn't really matter, it was all fine? No,
it did matter. I think the biggest thing, and this wasn't actually specific to gender, but for me it was the fact I wasn't degree level educated. That's been one of, when I looked at applying for other roles, that was one of the things where I was discounted from so many because I couldn't apply when I was at a certain level of experience in particular. So I think that was one thing that I noticed. The other thing, though, when you look at it through being a woman in shipping and having grown up that way, absolutely things were limited. When I was trying to move from ops into commercial, I was told blatantly at the time that, look, we would consider you, but also look at your age. You're going to have a baby at some point, probably. We can't risk you not being around. And that probably in this day and age sounds quite shocking, but it was very commonplace back then as well. So it was, there wasn't really a way to fight it. I'm not sure there is if someone says it to you now, but hopefully people are better advised around that and have better processes in place. So that hindered. So I couldn't go in the direction I wanted. So I really wanted to move in the commercial side of things. And so for me, the other thing that also hindered later on in life was being a single parent. So then it was becoming a parent, because I did go on to have a child. And then it was becoming a single parent and that wasn't deliberate obstructions. That was more systemic, I would say, in the sense that there were just simply certain things I couldn't get to or I couldn't go and do, or much more challenging. But also the ones that I really needed, I simply made it work. And I think part of the reason why I've set up my own organisations was to be able to create, for me, I created the environment that I needed to be able to carry on. And that's really lucky. And not many people can do that. It's not something that, I would recommend everyone tries to do. I think it's just my stubborn streak. It's all right. If I can't find it over here, I'm going to do it this way instead. So there was an element of, I want to stay in this industry. These are the paths I want to follow. This is what I care about. this is what we do.
So just touching on a bit about support and skills. So obviously you mentioned that not having a degree at that time was a disadvantage. How do you think the industry's changed now when it comes to routes of coming in to roles? And secondly, what support do you think has changed in equipping women so that they can balance their personal life as well as their professional life? And what do you think we might still need, I guess?
Okay, so
it's a bit of a big one.
You might have to remind me of some of the questions in that. The first one, so I remember the last two. The first one was...
when you mentioned beforehand about the degree being a bit of a hindrance, not having a degree being a bit of a hindrance on certain opportunities, do you think we've changed in terms of how we enter the industry now with career paths and qualifications and not necessarily needing a degree for everything?
Not enough,
okay.
I would say. So I think we are changing, but I think that one of the things that needs to happen in this sector is we need to go from looking backwards. What have we done before? Who have we hired before? What skills have we had before? It worked before, therefore we want the same again. And looking forward.
Yeah.
What do we need in the future, but also what's missing in the team? So what are our strengths? Do we need to, because quite often if you look at certain teams, they're made up of quite similar people in terms of education, sometimes very similar academic schools, even the same one we know. You know, I've worked with people who've said we only want people from this university with this degree. So that's a very limited pool if you take that approach. So I think we need to, my recommendation would be that organisations need to be a bit more open-minded. The challenge with that is it takes time. And of course, with that, the people who are responsible for the hiring, they're normally in really pressurised positions. If someone comes to you and it's a replacement position, you've only got a very limited period of time to get them replaced and someone up and running. So it's also ensuring that you equip people to understand the importance of taking that time, but they also have the support necessary if they're going to take that time. So I think we still really need to make changes there. And in terms of when we look at women coming into the industry and looking at it through that caring responsibility, we've definitely got better. And what we're seeing is there's better policies and processes in place. Legally, also, things have changed a lot. But of course, from an organisational perspective, there are better policies and processes in place to support it and to ensure that actually it's not a hindrance to you or your career if you do happen to have a baby and take maternity leave. But also, what's been really encouraging is we've seen a rise in paternity leave as well. So that actually all the responsibility isn't just falling on women to do this, that men have an option. We're seeing with the new generations coming into the workplace that actually both genders want to be there to take care of their children increasingly. So it's generally we're seeing a shift in society as well. Not everywhere. In some cultures it's very much still falls to the woman. But it's changing culturally, and therefore if it changes culturally, organisationally, you've got to keep up.
So just for the viewers, DSG produce a report every year with all the data from your members, which obviously has evolved from your 3 founding members to your 600 members today.
Well, we haven't got quite 600.
Ooh, okay. There's me.
We're approaching. No, we at the moment we have 30 member organisations.
My question to you is, from your latest DSG report, I might have got participants wrong who participated in the report, but from that particular report, the latest one that you've unveiled about a few weeks ago, what's some of the trends that are showing up in terms of, let's look at gender. So what's some of the trends that you can maybe share with the audience on some of the issues with gender, and some of the progress we've made, and some of the tips that you can maybe give to the audience of what's working in order to make it a bit more inclusive for women?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had, this year across the surveys that we do, we had nearly 10,000 respondents. So we had a lot of people, but that was across the shore and the seafaring surveys. What we saw from the shore-based survey was that when you look at women by department and women by levels of seniority, there's still work to be done. And it was something we identified last year. And we said, look, you need to keep a little bit of an eye on this because we're seeing some of the numbers tailing off. The pipeline is becoming weaker. So actually then you're not going to have the volume of women who can come through to leadership roles. We're still seeing that. So actually when you look at heads of department and director level, it's not where it needs to be and it's gone down a bit. So we need to be really careful that organisations are taking the time to understand why is that happening? Why are we seeing this falling off? Encouragingly, the number of women coming in at graduate and trainee level, the junior positions, has gone back up again a bit. Okay. So what we're seeing is that actually your pipeline should be there, but it's how you're developing it and supporting it to make sure you retain it that is the crucial part. So that's where we're seeing a bit of a glass ceiling, and that's not shifting at the moment. And that goes back over the 7 years we've been doing this. So that's a big warning, I would say, in terms of we need to be looking at that. In terms of departmentally as well, it's not just enough saying this is our gender representation across an organisation. What we're seeing in the support roles, so if you think finance, HR, admin, you're sat at plus 70% of those roles being occupied by women, which poses exactly the same challenges as when it's the other way around. So actually what we wanted to try and do is get that balance a bit better. But when you look at IT, when you look at chartering, and particularly when you look at technical roles as well, very male dominated. So again, it's thinking, well, where do we need to address the balance? Because it can't just sit in one department. So those are some of the findings that we're seeing in terms of what organisations are doing to address it. We're seeing them respond in different ways. One, you've got to make sure your policies and your processes not only exist, but you've got to monitor the take-up of them. So if you have really good parental leave, or if you have caring leave beyond your maternity and your paternity, are people aware of it? Are they taking advantage of it? Are people talking about it enough? We had one organisation who had some amazing policies in place, and they said, we're really surprised, just not being picked up on. And when they investigated, it was because people weren't aware they existed. So as soon as they started the comms around it, talking about it, ensuring people were aware of it, the uptake went up. So there can be different reasons for these happening. I think also career development and support. One of the biggest game changers across the entire survey, for this is now the third year running, and this applies to all demographics, is the importance of having a personal development conversation with your line manager. So the results in how people are feeling in the workplace, so do they feel that a sense of belonging? Do they feel safe to speak up? Do they feel that they've got a supportive peer group at work? If they have not had that personal development conversation with their line manager in the last 6 months, the results are way less than if they have. So again, some of this just comes down to really simple but good management practices.
So talking about personal development, we had a conversation earlier about your Crest Maritime Mentoring scheme. Can we maybe explore a little bit the importance of that and maybe some of the success stories that have come from that on building confidence or development, etc., and how schemes like that can work really well?
I'd be delighted to. It's because we have been so blown away actually by the successes that we're hearing coming out of it. Because so Crest Maritime Mentoring is a programme, it was actually an idea by one of our members who came to us and said, look, what about a cross-industry mentoring programme? We're like, that's amazing, yes. Let's see. We had a working group internally and through that Crest was born. So it's a cross-industry mentoring programme for people in the maritime industry. Normally at least 4 or 5 years experience, but some of them up to 18 years. So who are all having different challenges or different phases of their career development where they can benefit from a really senior mentor in the industry. And the program is structured in a way where we have workshops, we have a masterclass, so there's sharing of knowledge, but then there's the one-to-one mentoring conversations that take place over a 6-month period. And we also have an alumni that is running after it. And we had our first meeting of that this week, and that's where we heard the success stories. So there we had people talking to us about, I've been given a new role, I've got my first team member to manage. Someone was saying to us that they're being pivotal in winning new business for the organisation, but typically at the point where they would have been excluded from the final in-person contract negotiations and meetings, they were included because they had the confidence to say, I'd really like to be part of that. So we've seen some, across the board, we've seen confidence building. I would say it was one of the big things that came up, but also how people are saying, working with my mentor equipped me to be able to consider things from different perspectives. It gave me the ability, the confidence again, to ask for things I wouldn't have asked for previously, and to put myself forward for opportunities more.
Have any of these mentees have a desire to become mentors now?
We hope they will.
Yeah,
absolutely. For us, that would be a wonderful circle. So some of them are starting to consider how they might do that. Certainly, again, what we also heard was, I took things that I heard and learned in Crest, and I am now applying it to the team that I'm managing. So there's also this real feeling of, I am receiving knowledge, and therefore I'm imparting it to others so that I can share my learnings with other people. And it's inspiring, but it's also so lovely to hear that it's having a tangible impact as well.
And just for the audience, is this available for non-members, or is it just
No, it's available.
DSG?
No, it's available to anyone.
And we touched upon a little bit about training in our earlier conversation when we were having a little catch-up. What do you think? What does good training look like when it comes to diversity? What's kind of the top 3 things that you would say, when companies are looking for investing in training and wanted to make it inclusive when it comes to inclusive leadership, inclusive training, etc. What's some of the good tips that you should be looking out for?
I think the first one for me is, when it comes to inclusion and diversity, it's looking at, well, what's your strategy and how does it tie in with your business objectives? So it has to tie in with what you're trying to achieve as a business. Which leads me to my second point. It has to be bespoke, because if it isn't relevant to your context, it is not going to have the impact. There are so many off-the-shelf options available, and we spoke about this earlier. But actually, if it's not in your context, and the people who are on the receiving end of that learning and development, that training, if it doesn't resonate with them and they can't see the why in it for them, then it's compliance rather than value add. So that bespoke, contextualized development is absolutely crucial as well. And the other thing, when it comes particularly to sort of like the inclusive leadership, management, inclusive colleague side of things, is it has to be at all levels of the organisation. I've spoken to people who've said, and particularly middle management, really responding really well at the moment, I think, because they are really struggling in many respects, because they've got so many different priorities that they have to juggle. But they really want to understand more, well, how can we do this stuff better? But one of the challenges as well that they face is when they don't see it being role modelled from above. So when I look at this, it can't just apply to one part of the organisation. It has to be role modelled from the top and cascaded.
So it's interesting we mentioned about middle managers. This is something that has come up quite a few times. What support can, apart from being role models, can C-suite give to middle managers and the senior suite give to middle managers, especially when the pressures are so much of delivering targets, managing people, limited time? What support can they, expect, or from their leaders, to make their job a little bit easier and to effectively manage diversity and culture?
I think in terms of support, one of the biggest challenges for middle managers is when they are feeling the least psychologically safe in their roles when they are within the first 2 years of being in a management position. So that's sort of the time. But also middle managers in our data, but also data, there was a Harvard Business Review report released recently, which showed that they are least psychologically safe in their data as well. So it's interesting that ours actually married up. So middle managers are feeling less psychologically safe than the people above them, but also than the teams who sit below them by several percentage points. A lot of that is exacerbated, as I say, when they're new to roles. So they haven't managed people before. So first and foremost is equip them to lead others and to understand how to do it. When I look at organisations, one of the things that actually I think we haven't done very well is equip people how to lead. And I think that's something that is very much a growing and emerging trend that is only going to increase. But I think the other thing is also taking the time to listen to your middle managers and ask them first and then listen, what actually are the challenges you're facing? You shouldn't assume. I mean, there are some general rules, but again, depending on which department you're sitting in, if you look at the ports, the people who are sat in the office in the port are going to have really different challenges to the ones who are out in the field, literally out in the port. So it's understanding, well, these different groups of people that we have, what are the different pressures on them, the different challenges, how can we support them? And then it's making sure that there's things like, that people understand that there is leadership development, that there's also clear career progression and frameworks as well. So where do I go beyond this? So they don't just feel that they're stuck there. And beyond that, there was one other point I was going to make, and it's gone flying out of my mind, is also, I think, just the general communication across a business as well. So helping middle managers, again, I mentioned this before in relation to other areas, understanding the why.
Yeah.
So if you're asking me to lead inclusively, or if diversity is important to us as an organisation, being really specific about, well, why this is important to our organisation so that they understand and buy in as well.
Just thinking about the future and progress within the industry, what mindset should future leaders have in maritime to further progress when it comes to inclusion?
I think an open-minded mindset is one of them. And I think when we look at future leaders and we look at people coming into this industry, but also just future generations, if you think about how they're going to navigate their careers, it's more of a career portfolio rather than a hierarchical transition that is being anticipated in the future. So I think that open-mindedness, I think the ability to bring teams together effectively, and it might be that you are going to become the leader of a team, but a lot of it's also going to become about project management skills, so bringing people from different teams together. So we need to equip leaders to do that. So I think in terms of mindset, open-mindedness, curiosity, learning about people, learning about what's important to them, what they're doing, because then you can understand how they can also add value. And being equipped, we talked about those different kinds of differences earlier, being equipped to really work with people of all different types of abilities and backgrounds to be able to get them involved in the conversations and in the work that's being done, rather than just relying on certain people. So ensuring everybody almost gets the microphone, if you like, within the business.
So thinking about aspiring individuals who want to join the industry, and when we now adopt more green technology, more data-driven operations, where do you see the opportunities for a diverse talent pipeline?
I think we are seeing the technological development side. We're seeing a lot more diversity coming into the industry from that side. I think that is one area. I think also as we look at that, as you say, the green transition as well, the energy transition. But generally, I feel the opportunities exist across the industry. It's how we bring it in. So it's also how are we, where are we going to attract people to the industry? How are we selling the opportunities as well? So it's also very organisationally dependent, because if those organisations aren't committed to it in the first place, they might have a great job. And what we tend to find is people go in, and if they might go into an organisation, but actually if they don't find that diversity is represented internally when they join, and that it has that inclusive culture, they're not going to stay very long. So there is a real mix. But I think we have so much going on in this sector. You look at AI, it is being used. We don't know how it's going to be used still in the future. No one does, of course. It's changing so rapidly. And what an amazing opportunity there as well. But also when you look at the seafarers on board ships, I was really fortunate. I was in Manila recently, and we were doing workshops with seafarers there and talking to people. We were talking to female seafaring engineers who were inspired to join this, because within the role that they have, it's about dealing with the technology on board the ships. So again, it's tapping into that this is what some of the younger generation are really interested in, and that's where we're seeing that diversity starting to come through.
And just think about skills. What skills do you think would be advantageous for new people joining the industry? What you think, actually, this will be really good for you to maybe home in on?
I think that's a difficult question to answer, because that's so individual.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it depends on where you want to go. There is so much. So if you are, if you are technical, then it's going to be around, there's a lot going on around now around data and analysis and how you interpret that and bring it to life. We're seeing the human element come through more as well, in terms of also well-being, psychological safety, and how that translates in the industry. So I think in terms of the overall skills, it very much depends on what motivates you as a person. So I think that would be the starting point for me, and then looking at actually what do those routes open you out into. People skills, I think, is one of the big ones that we're seeing, and that's whether or not you're a manager or a leader. It's the ability to also interact with other people in a really positive way. And I think those are ones that we need to be more mindful of, because also generationally, culturally, there are so many nuances we need to be aware of that can make a real difference.
So looking back at your career, what's a lesson you wish you had learned earlier in your career?
Don't be scared. For me, I think would be the big one. Don't be scared to ask questions. They're not going to be the silly ones. You're only going to hear someone else asking them further down the line. Don't be scared to put yourself forward for something. And I think probably the biggest one, which I definitely have learnt now, is don't be scared to turn to your network and ask them, because what you tend to find is it's very underutilised in the early stages of careers. But actually, we're all human. Most of us are predisposed to wanting to help other people and to wanting to help other people be successful and develop, particularly when they are already within your network. So I think, don't be scared, and really take advantage of the wonderful system and the people around you to help yourself, because also it's give and take. So you'll be giving probably as much as you're taking in that respect.
I like that. And finally, so obviously we spoke about Women in Ports and what we're trying to achieve and the different hubs. According to you, in 3 words, what should Women in Ports be?
I think you're doing an amazing job already. And so I think it's building on what you're already doing. I think informative, influential, and inspirational.
I like that.
So they'd be the ones, because I think from that it encompasses what you're doing and where you're looking to go. But it's, they're my 3.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Honestly, this has been fantastic. And just to get in your perspective, it's just been eye-opening and homing on your experience. So thank you so much for having us. I'm so sorry for being here with us. It's the other way around today. And I look forward to working with you in the future. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great.